What's up, everyone? My name is Ryan. Today is Thursday, September 17th, and today I'll be giving you the daily polling breakdown for the 2020 election. A little bit about me. So my name is Ryan Matsumoto. I live in the San Francisco Bay Area. I graduated from Stanford in 2016, where I majored in computer science and minored in economics. So I work in technology, but I'm also really into politics and elections. I'm a contributing analyst at Inside Elections, which provides nonpartisan analysis of elections for president, governor, Senate, and US House. And at Inside Elections, I've been working on the Presidential Battlegrounds article series. And I've also been working on a long-term data analysis project focused on down-ballot elections. So my articles have also been published at 538, NBC News, and Decision Desk HQ. And I've also been cited by numerous publications, including The Atlantic, The Washington Post, and New York Magazine. So I also do a lot of elections analysis on Twitter. So you can follow me on Twitter at Ryan Matsumoto1 to get all of the latest news. So a little bit about the Ryan's Daily Polling Breakdown series. So I'm creating this new YouTube series to give you a daily analysis of 2020 election polls every single day from now until Election Day in November. So I will focus on polls for President, Senate, and US House. And I'll also dive into both national polls as well as state polls, because we all know about the importance of the Electoral College. So in this series, I'm going to answer 3 questions in every single video. Number 1, what do the polls say? Number 2, are these polls reliable? And number 3, what do these polls mean for the election? So quick disclaimer, these videos represent my views as an individual only and do not represent the views of Inside Elections or any other organization I am associated with. So let's go ahead and dive into today's polls. So first off, we have our national polls. So we have one poll from USC Dornsife, which has Biden +7. Fun fact about the USC poll, this was actually one of the only polls in 2016 that actually had Trump winning the popular vote. So interesting that they had Biden ahead this time. We also have another national poll from Targo's Market Research, which has Biden +1. So I've never heard about this pollster, but we'll definitely go ahead and just throw it into the polling average. And speaking of the polling averages, we have snapshots here of the 538 and Real Clear Politics polling averages. So the 538 national polling average has Biden ahead by 6.6 points. And the Real Clear Politics national polling average has Biden ahead by 5.8 points. So overall, the national polls tell a pretty clear picture. Biden is ahead, and he has consistently maintained his lead. But we all know from 2016 that the national popular vote does not decide the election. What decides the election is the Electoral College. So let's go ahead and dive into some of those state polls for some of these states that will decide the Electoral College. So first off, we have Arizona. So we have one poll here from Monmouth University that has Biden ahead by 2 points. So Monmouth is a very high quality pollster. It's rated A+ by 538. We also have another poll from the Kaiser Family Foundation, which has Biden ahead by 5 points. So one note about the Kaiser polls is that the Kaiser polls are registered voter polls rather than likely voter polls. And registered voter polls tend to be a bit more friendly towards Democrats than likely voter polls. And that's because Democrats just tend to turn out to vote a little bit less than Republicans. Another note about the Kaiser polls is that this poll was conducted from August 29th through September 13th. So it includes a little bit of older data that may not be as relevant to us now in mid-September. But overall, I would say that these 2 polls of Arizona are pretty good for Joe Biden. So Arizona is a state that voted for President Trump by 3.5 points in 2016. So it's always good for Biden when he is leading in a state that Trump previously won. Arizona has 11 electoral votes, and it offers Biden a path to the White House beyond the Rust Belt. So next up, we have some polls out of North Carolina. So one poll from USA Today in Suffolk has Biden up by 4 points. So Suffolk is a high-quality pollster. It's rated A by 538. But one note here is that this poll is not weighted by education. So on the right side, we have a snapshot from their polling release. And this shows the breakdown of their poll respondents based on their education level. And what you notice here is if you add up the category for college graduate and also the category for master's or PhD, you reach a polling sample that has 49% of the sample respondents having a college degree. So the problem here is that's a bit too high. So most analysis of North Carolina suggests that only about 38% of North Carolina voters have a college degree. And the problem here is that voters with a college degree tend to be more Democratic than voters without a college degree, especially in a state like North Carolina. So that means that this poll may possibly be a bit too friendly towards the Democrats. We have another poll from the Kaiser Family Foundation, which has Biden up by 2 points. So overall, I would say that both of these polls in combination are pretty decent for Biden. North Carolina is another state that voted for Trump. It voted for him by 3.7 points in 2016. It has 15 electoral votes, and it has traditionally been a Republican state. You might recall that President Obama actually won the state in 2008, but then it went ahead and voted for Romney in 2012 and Trump in 2016. So North Carolina typically does end up on that list of swing states each election cycle. But it's important to note that North Carolina is still Republican leaning relative to the nation as a whole. It'll usually be a few points to the right of the nation. It's definitely not a state that Biden has to win, but if Biden does end up winning North Carolina, that just cuts off another path to the presidency that Trump had. We also have some polls out of Florida. So here we have one poll from the Kaiser Family Foundation, which has Biden ahead by 1 point. So this poll is all right for Biden. It's not great for him. There have been some polls that we've seen out of Florida that give Biden larger leads. So Florida voted for Trump by 1.2 points in 2016. So very close. Florida is almost always razor thin at the end. It has 29 electoral votes. And I would definitely say that Florida is a state to watch on election night. So the reason for that is Florida will probably be able to count their ballots really fast. So a few reasons for this. Number one, Florida has a lot of experience with mail-in voting. So even before the COVID-19 pandemic, a large percentage of Florida voters already voted by mail, including President Trump. And because of this, Florida has the elections infrastructure that's capable of processing all of these mail-in ballots. So in Florida, ballots must be received by election day. So if you have a mail-in ballot, you need to fill it out and mail it to the election center, and it actually has to arrive at the election center by election day. So that is in contrast to some other states where you can actually just postmark your ballot on election day. It could be floating through the mail for a few days and not arrive until like a week later, and it would still count. But with Florida, all ballots must be in by election day. And this means that Florida elections officials will be able to count all those ballots as they come in. Another thing about Florida is that election officials in Florida have the capability to start processing mail-in ballots before election day. Another contrast to some other states where they actually have a rule where you're not allowed to touch the ballots until election day. So that sort of slows down the process for counting those mail-in ballots. So long story short, Florida will be able to count its ballots fast, and it will be able to count all of its ballots, including election day votes as well as mail-in votes on election night. And if Biden wins Florida, it will be very hard for Trump to win. So the reason for this is that Florida has 29 electoral votes. That's a lot of electoral votes. And if Biden wins Florida, then it just cuts off so many different paths to the presidency for President Trump. And he would likely have to basically sweep a lot of the other swing states, especially in the Midwest. Another thing is that if Biden goes ahead and wins Florida by about 4 or 5 points on election night, that will give us a lot of clues about the national political environment and that perhaps it's very friendly towards the Democrats. And Florida will also tell us a bit of information about whether or not the polls might end up being off by a bit. So those 3 states, Arizona, North Carolina, and Florida, are super important for this election. And one reason is that they give Biden a Sun Belt path to the presidency. So here on the left, we have the Electoral College map from 2016, where President Trump defeated Hillary Clinton 306 to 232. So in order to win back the presidency, Biden needs to get up to 270 electoral votes. So those three states, Arizona, North Carolina, and Florida, where I just showed you some polls showing Biden ahead in all three states, offer Biden a Sun Belt path to victory. If Biden is able to flip those three states from red to blue, then he will win the Electoral College 287 to 251. So Biden would be able to win with these states even if he loses all of Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. So definitely watch out for more polls from each of these states moving forward. We also have some other state polls. We have one poll out of California from the Public Policy Institute of California that has Biden ahead by 29 points. So this is a high quality pollster. It's rated A/B by 538. It's a decent poll for Biden. It's not great. California voted for Clinton by 30 points in 2016. So Biden is sort of matching what Hillary Clinton got a few years ago. California has 55 electoral votes. But one thing to keep in mind here is that polls have actually underestimated Democrats in recent years in California. So after the 2016 election, there was a lot of talk about how a lot of polls were off and they underestimated Trump. But an interesting twist there is that in some states, the polls actually underestimated Clinton. And California was one of those states where they actually underestimated Clinton by about 7 points. The polls also underestimated Democrats in some other election cycles. So in 2012, they underestimated President Obama by 9 points. And in 2018, they underestimated Democrat Gavin Newsom in the gubernatorial race by about 6 points. So it's possible that we might be seeing something similar again here this year, where the polls in California might be underestimating Biden a bit. We also have a new state poll out of Utah from RMG Research. It has Trump ahead by 18 points. So this pollster is rated B/C by 538. And the exact top line is Trump 53% and Biden 35%. So I would say this is actually a decent poll for Trump. Utah voted for Trump by 18 points in 2016. So it shows that Trump is matching his performance from 4 years ago. There was some talk earlier in the election cycle about Utah potentially being a state that could flip towards Biden just because many of its voters, although traditionally Republican voters, don't necessarily like Trump all that much. But based on the polling we've seen, it looks like Trump is still favored in Utah this year. So in 2016, you might recall that Trump won Utah with under 50% of the vote. So he got 46%. Clinton got 27%. There was a third-party conservative independent candidate, Evan McMullin, who got 22%. And also the libertarian Gary Johnson got 4%. So Utah is a conservative state that did not particularly like Trump. So Trump won the state, but he underperformed previous Republican nominees who won with larger margins. And the reason for that is that Utah has a pretty high percentage of Mormons and also a pretty high percentage of college-educated voters. And both of those demographic groups do not really like Trump as much as other Republicans. And Utah has 6 electoral votes. We also have some Senate polls. So we have a few polls out of Arizona. One from Monmouth has the Democrat Mark Kelly up by 4 points. And the other from the Kaiser Family Foundation has Kelly up by 8 points. We also have some polls out of North Carolina. So Suffolk/USA Today has the Democrat Cal Cunningham up by 4 points. And the Kaiser Family Foundation poll also has Cunningham up by 4 points. So I would say that all these polls are pretty solid for the Democrats. To win the Senate, Democrats need to get a net gain of 3 seats plus the presidency. And probably their easiest path to winning the Senate majority includes Colorado, Arizona, Maine, and North Carolina. And the reason for that is that it includes 2 states that were won by Hillary Clinton. So that's Colorado and Maine. And in addition to that, you have Arizona and North Carolina, which did vote for Trump in 2016, but only voted for him by 4 points. So those are probably the easiest pickup opportunities. And we do see here that Biden is currently leading in polls of Arizona and North Carolina. So that's really positive for him and gives Democrats a really good shot at winning back the Senate majority. One note here is that this all assumes that Democrats lose the Senate seat in Alabama. So you might recall that in 2017, the Democrat Doug Jones actually won a special election in Alabama against Roy Moore, the Republican. So Roy Moore was the primary reason why Doug Jones won, just because he was such a controversial nominee. But this year, Doug Jones does not have the luxury of running against Roy Moore. So he will likely lose just because Alabama is a heavily Republican state, and this is a presidential year as well. But overall, pretty good news for Democrats' chances of winning back the Senate. We also have one House poll. So this is a poll of Texas's 3rd district. It's an internal Democratic poll. And I always say that you should take these internal polls or these partisan polls with a huge grain of salt. And the reason for that is that internal polls, they have a pretty huge incentive to show polls that are positive for their party or their candidate. And it doesn't necessarily mean that they're really fudging the numbers at all. But what happens instead is that oftentimes these internal polls, they're only going to want to release the polls if it looks good for their candidate. So if they do an internal poll and the poll looks bad for their candidate, oftentimes they'll just keep it on the down low. So when you're looking at these internal polls, you're sort of only getting a partial view of what's actually going on. But nonetheless, we have this poll that was conducted for the DCCC and the Cycle E campaign, and it was conducted by the GSG polling group. It found that the Republican incumbent Representative Van Taylor was up by only 1 point, and that Joe Biden is actually leading in the district by 3 points. So this is a suburban district north of Dallas. It includes suburbs like Plano, McKinney, and Frisco. And it is a pretty Republican district that has been getting a bit more friendly towards the Democrats recently. So it voted for Mitt Romney by 30 points in 2012. Trump won it by a narrower margin of 14 points in 2016. And then in the Senate race in 2018, Ted Cruz only won it by 3 points. So definitely pretty eye-popping that Joe Biden is actually winning in this suburban district. Texas's 3rd district is the most highly educated district currently held by a Republican. 55% of its adults have a bachelor's degree or higher. And it sort of just follows the general theme that we've been seeing in American politics recently, where college-educated suburbanites are moving towards the Democrats. And if Biden is able to do really well in districts like this in parts of suburban Texas, that bodes really well for his chances of winning the state as a whole. So I really do believe that this could be the year in which Democrats make blue Texas a reality. And that's it. Thanks so much for joining for my first video of the Ryan's Daily Polling Breakdown series. Please like, subscribe, and comment. And also follow me on Twitter at RyanMatsumoto1 to get the latest elections analysis. Thanks.